What now? Save the girl? You'll have to kill me, Charles. And what will that accomplish? Let them pass that law and they'll have you in chains with a number burned into your forehead.
This is the best scene.
It's so good.
This is like a masterclass of what the X-Men is all about. At its core, the conflict, the ideologies, the power sets coming into play. This scene really shows the Darth Vader-ness of Magneto. He rips all the guns away from the cops and turns them around and points to them. So cool. It's such a cool visual. And then there's a plot twist that is Charles Xavier taking over the mind of Sabretooth and Toad. And we really get to showcasing how OP both Magneto and Professor X are. We get to the core of the human-mutant relations with both these guys. The scene is like so good. What is poppin', you Teenage Mutant podcast listeners? Welcome in. It is the Just Play It podcast. I am Professor Pop. We're the men that are going to give it to you before X is going to give it to you. And alongside me, giving it straight to you guys, staring you down with my Cyclops eye, it is my best bub in the world. You might know him as the corn dog himself, the 2025 hot dog gobbler of the year. He is Glizzy McGuire. He is Snick Nick. Although this week I might have to call him Sick Nick because my boy got that strep throat. It is my best friend, Ridiculous Nicholas Justice.
That's probably the best introduction I have ever received. I was going to say ever will receive, but I know you will outdo yourself one of these days.
Always up. We're like K-pop demon hunters. We're going up. We're golden.
I'm unaware. I'm out of the loop. I'm old.
Oh, you haven't seen that? Okay. Well, that's a conversation for another time. That's a conversation for another time. I don't want to cut off your hello. So say hi to the crowd. Welcome in, buddy. Sorry you're sick.
It's okay. This is my Jordan flu game. This episode right here.
I was going to say that too. I was going to say that.
Yeah.
This is Nick's strep pod.
Let's do it.
And he's soldiering on. He's here. He's going to be sniffling, but you're not going to hear it. We're that good at editing. And if you want to listen to us and watch us, don't forget, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Just Play It Podcast. We're on X at Just Play It Pod. Nick promised you a whole bunch of controversy on X this year. He said he's going to have that poppin', to quote him from the previous episode.
It's coming.
We are watching X-Men from the year 2000, and we did say, hey, this year, similar to last year, we're going to kind of have two franchises of the year going on. This is the secondary franchise, I'll say. Alien is our main, and that's going to be the main focus. But we figured, hey, since Avengers Doomsday is coming out at the end of the year, we know the original X-Men cast is going to be in it. What a perfect reason to revisit the original trilogy. And I'm excited to talk about this. I have seen this a handful of times. This is probably like my fifth watch of it, I'd say, because I never watched it when they first came out. I think you're probably a person who has. Oh, yeah. And I did a lot of watching of these during the pandemic when there was a bunch of time to kill. And I was like, you know what? Time to finally watch X-Men.
I love it. Yeah, no, we had this. I remember it was the like holographic VHS case that we had for it. It was in the
cutting edge
bottom drawer under the TV. And we would bust this one out and watch it quite a bit because spoiler alert, we've talked about this before, but it is one of the only superhero movies worth watching that came out around the time. Blade, this, and then a short year or two later, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. And this really kicked off a lot of the modern day superhero movies. And James, would this officially be an NCU movie that we do? Or because it's getting pulled in to the MCU, does that make it adjacent? How are we viewing this one?
It's getting sucked into the MCU in real time. And yes, we did have a mission when we first started this podcast to watch superhero movies that were not connected to a major cinematic universe called the NCU, Not So Cinematic Universe, or Non-Cinematic Universe. But yeah, the X-Men movies and property have been slowly getting adapted into the MCU. You'll see my Deadpool mask behind me. That was my Halloween costume in 2024 when Deadpool and Wolverine came out. They brought in Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, not from the same universe, but you know, they're making ties. We had a Charles Xavier appearance in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We now have the word mutant being thrown around in Disney Plus shows for Marvel. So yeah, they're slowly getting adopted into the MCU. So maybe we're just trying to beat it before it's officially MCU canon, even though it pretty much is. So Nick, before we get into it, we need to hit the audience with our pre-pop score, our gut reaction score, and we're going to let the audience know what we think of this movie in just 3 simple words. So if you have your pre-pop ready, then I will count you down from 3, 2, 1. Nick, X-Men, you are hitting with a clean 7.0. And say less with your description. Give me 3 words that hit your mind after watching this movie.
Of the time.
Nice.
All right, James, your turn now. You're hitting me with the same thing, pre-pop score for the audience, and then I'll ask you for your 3 words. Count you down from 3, 2, 1. James, I see you're giving X-Men a 7.7, a little higher than me. And James, give me those 3 words off the top of your dome to explain this movie.
Leather X-Men.
Okay, I mean that's 2 because X-Men I think has a dash and that makes it compound, but we'll allow it. I'll allow it today.
Leather wearing X-Men.
Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Use those words, you got them.
Well, now I'm curious. Is X-Men 2 words? I'm Googling it. Okay, it does say yes, X-Men is generally considered 2 words. But then it says or a hyphenated compound word. So whatever. Yes, I agree with your 3 words. Very of the time. It was back in the day when studios were a little bit too cool for superheroes and their costumes, and they're trying to get really stylized. And I kept seeing that this was described as a serious take on the franchise, but I was like, I didn't get that at all. I didn't get it. Like it was serious and dark, you know? So I don't know what they're comparing it to, but yeah, but Blade, this movie, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, those really paved the way for what we now know as the MCU and its success. Even like we like the first Fantastic Four from 2005. It's very campy and corny, but we still think they nailed the spirit of the characters in that one. And I think this movie got a lot of it right when it was kind of uncharted territory for superhero movies. But Nick, let's go ahead. Let's just read off our players here. Who is in the chair for us?
James, in the chair, we have Bryan Singer.
The problematic Bryan Singer. Do you know much about Bryan Singer?
I want you to tell me all about it.
Okay, we'll get to Mr. Singer here in a minute. But Nick, who is penning this bad boy?
James, writing this bad boy is Tom DeSanto, the aforementioned Bryan Singer, and David Hayter.
Now, Nick, are you saying that the voice actor for the Metal Gear Solid franchise, David Hayter, wrote this movie? Is that what you're telling me right now? Did you know that?
Is this the voice actor for Snake? For Solid Snake?
This is Snake.
This is Snake. Colonel, can you hear me?
This is Snake from Metal Gear Solid, David Hayter. So David Hayter has a screenplay credit by. You know, we always say, oh, who was this written by? Who did what? The writing credits say that Tom DeSanto and Bryan Singer did the story and David Hayter did the screenplay. We say this all the time. We're like, what does that mean? What is story by? What's the difference between written by and screenplay? So you know what? I looked it up and I'm going to give you an explanation. So the difference with written by, story by, screenplay by, the explanations I found were sourced from nofilmschool.com. So let's start out with story by. So the common misconception is that it refers to a person who came up with the idea, but it actually refers to anyone who worked on a treatment or any story outline. So I think that means it's not only people who come up with the idea, but it's also this. So if you don't know what a treatment is, it's basically like a presentation, like an essay of here's the plot, here's the story, here's a description of the characters. It's the treatment of the movie. Question, Nick, front row.
Yes.
Mr. Glizzy.
Yes.
Glizzy McGuire.
Would you include like storyboarding as part of this?
I think, yeah, because that's part of crafting the story. Yeah, I'd say so.
Storyboarding is generally not considered writing by the Writers Guild of America, as it is considered a visual, directorial, or production tool rather than a literary contribution such as a screenplay, treatment, or outline. WGA credit requires the submission of written literary material. Nice try, James.
Thank you, Mr. Pop.
You're welcome.
Continue.
You might also get a story by credit if you're hired to do a page one rewrite. So that entails throwing out everything except for the concept. And they're saying, you're going back to page one, we're rewriting this bad boy, but keep the concept. That gets you a sole screenplay by, despite the initial writer having written a complete script. So the first writer on an original screenplay is entitled to a shared story by credit. That bylaw is called the irreducible story minimum. And a lot of these are negotiated by the WGA, Writers Guild of America. So screenplay by, this credit goes to writers who physically wrote drafts or scenes that are included in the final version of the movie. Screenplay by can only be shared by 3 people or 3 teams of people. David Hayter, I'll get to how he got onto this project, and then you'll see why the screenplay by credit makes sense. And now, finally, let's get to the big juicy one, written by. So this is used when writers are entitled to both screenplay by and story by credit. This does not apply to adaptations or any screenplays with source material, but that does not count newspapers, articles, or biographies. As a rule, written by will not be shared by more than 2 writers. So written by is basically like, Quentin Tarantino, all of his movies, they say written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. It's his idea. He wrote the script. He's doing it all. Written by is like the top tier credit.
Yeah.
As far as work is concerned.
Head coach.
And story by is like, yeah, you're doing the concept or you had a say in what the general story should be. And then the screenplay is like, you're the one physically writing it. As we can see, bylaws can, on technicalities, be, well, you get a screenplay by credit if you do this or you do this. Now, this was a fun one. Ampersand versus and. So if it says it's written by Nick and James, but if it's an ampersand, the ampersand means that the names are a writing team, which is on brand for us. The word and, however, can be found in the names of 2 or 3 different screenwriters. That credit identifies the 2 or 3 different writers attached to the project during separate drafts. I thought that was interesting. Clear-cut description of what it all means. Last episode, when we watched Alien, the writing credits were the story was by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, and the screenplay by was for Dan O'Bannon as well. And we did discuss how the producers, Walter Hill and David Giler, did do all these extensive and add-ons to the story. But it says right here, they did all this rewriting, but they have uncredited rewrites on the script, even after adding the character of Ash, refining dialogue. But the Writers Guild of America awarded sole screenplay credit to Dan O'Bannon following a dispute. So Hill and Giler were not credited for their writing contributions on screen, though they are credited as producers. That's another thing. The WGA comes in and they'll make decisions, or there'll be hearings or settlements. And sometimes when there's a decision made, like, writers aren't allowed to talk about it or talk about the process. So it's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
I've always thought, like, I hope people don't get shafted out of that, or people trying to do some dirty work of like, oh, if I just sneakily write in this percentage of the story, then I can add on my name to the credit, So I'm sure it happens all the time, but
I know that came up.
It's not so simple sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not so simple.
I know that came up a couple years back when there was the Writers Guild strike, right? And they're like, oh, you can't work on anything. But these guys are creatives, right? They're kind of tweaking things, sending things to each other. Hey, I've been playing around with this. Well, if you worked on it during that time, you were not allowed to throw your name onto anything. So there was a lot of stuff that got passed around that, due to, not wanting to get in trouble with the guild, you had to keep your mouth shut and stay off of the project.
And actually on this movie, there were a handful of writers that gave a crack at the writing for this script, which include Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote The Usual Suspects, which Singer actually directed, Mission Impossible 7. Joss Whedon, who directed The Avengers, took a crack at it. Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote Seven. Ed Solomon, who wrote Men in Black and Bill and Ted. John Logan, who wrote Gladiator. And James Schamus, who wrote Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Wow.
Tom DeSanto, who has that story by credit, he was a co-producer on a movie that Singer directed called Apt Pupil, which actually stars Ian McKellen and also has Bruce Davison in it, who plays Senator Kelly in this film. Since Bryan Singer was not a comic book fan and had no knowledge of the X-Men franchise, he did task his producer, Tom DeSanto, to write a treatment for the film, as he was an X-Men obsessive since childhood. Bryan Singer, in fact, actually banned comic books on set because he didn't want his film characters to to evolve into two-dimensional characters. Kevin Feige, who we now know as the head of the MCU, we do know from this podcast that he started as an assistant to Lauren Shuler Donner, who is a very prolific producer in Hollywood. And he got his producing career started on this movie as an associate producer. He didn't grow up necessarily reading Marvel comics, but as soon as he got this job, he made it his mission to dive deep into the Marvel comics source material. Hugh Jackman even said that Feige would slip him comic books under the radar due to the comic books being banned on set rule. And in a New York Times, did you know about that? Did you know about the no comic books on set rule with Singer?
It's insane to me, but no, I did not know.
It's weird, right? And I'll touch upon why it's a little bit ass backwards when we get to the actual.
Hey, here's the source material of your character. Do you want to know about him? No.
In a New York Times interview with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds a couple years ago, and I'm assuming that this is during the Deadpool and Wolverine press tour or something, Jackman said, I'll do my best Australian accent. Feige was just being a really good guy. We did bond on that film. Big time. When I got the part, he was slipping me some comic books under the radar because the director didn't want them on set. Ryan Reynolds adds, curious. Jackman says, I think he was worried about people reading the comic, that people would think they were two-dimensional. Nick, rate my accents from a 9 to 10, Australian and Canadian.
Oh, the Australian was very strong. I think the Canadian script just didn't let you shine through on that.
Damn it. Maybe if I had a comic book on set, I would get into my character more. So David Hayter was actually just hired to answer phones for Bryan Singer. By the summer of 1998, X-Men was greenlit at a $75 million budget, with McQuarrie brought in to do a 3-week rewrite. And by October of that year, McQuarrie hadn't delivered his draft, and Fox rescinded its green light for the film. At that point, DeSanto and Singer worked on the script and were given the green light again. I always want to say Josh, but it's Joss.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon came in late for a rewrite. It was good, said Lauren Shuler Donner. It had humor in it, but Bryan wanted this movie to be much more serious and more dramatic. Only 2 of Whedon's lines made it into the shooting script. I'll call them out when we get there. But back to David Hayter, Mr. Solid Snake himself, having a screenplay by credit. He has screenplay credits for The Scorpion King, the following X-Men movie, and Watchmen.
Ooh.
Hayter was a nobody in 97, and in 1998, he got Metal Gear Solid, and in 1999, he got the opportunity to write on the X-Men film. And according to an interview with David Hayter, which can be found on a YouTube channel I watched called Voquent, posted no less than 2 months ago on December 5th, 2025, David said that he was hired to answer phones on the project. He was one of the few people working in the office who knew comic books. He knew Singer from a small film called Burned, which came out in 1998, and Singer knew David as a filmmaker. David suggested a scene, and Bryan said, okay, go write that for me. David Hayter thought that he was kidding, and then suddenly, he was writing on the X-Men movie. And then from an oral history log, I discovered a lot of quotes from everybody involved in the movie, and what I found was that the scene he suggested was something between Wolverine and Cyclops, which have a very important dynamic in this movie, and historically in the X-Men comics and shows and movies. So Hayter said that when he was working on it, he learned a lot about studio politics. He was coming into it thinking, this is X-Men. We're going to have fun making this. But then he says there was no fun behind the scenes. It's stressful. He learned about writing for a budget. Hayter, fun fact, also has a small part in the movie because he thought he was not going to get the writing credit for it. So he asked Singer if he can play one of the museum cops. As in the third act, when they find the cop on the ground and he says, hey, this one's alive.
Hey, this one's alive. Let's get him out of here.
That's actually David Hayter.
I like that fun fact.
Yeah, it's pretty random. You're like, what? That's cool. Way to stack the resume there, Mr. Hayter.
I'm curious, what did he move out to Hollywood, or what he was in Hollywood for? Was he there for acting, voice acting, to be on behind the scenes? He was just kind of floating around.
Yeah, I've seen interviews of John Hamm said he was on a set deck crew, just out in LA. You're just trying to get work, maybe you're trying to be an actor and you're just doing other jobs. But he says that, he was a filmmaker back then. So maybe he was trying to be a producer, or trying to be creative, or maybe he was trying to act. But it's just interesting how the chips fall and lead you to where you end up being. So from a oral history log, David Hayter quote, Bryan Singer started taking me to script meetings with Peter Rice, and I was brought into those meetings with Fox executive Tom Rothman, and Peter Rice is the guy who actually reached out to Singer to be the director for X-Men. Singer would say, just sit there, take notes, don't say anything, and don't tell anyone you're writing the script. Producer Ralph Winter knew, and he asked me to highlight everything I'd done in the script, and at that point, it was about 55% of the script. So you're thinking there's a little bit of a bargaining chip there, like, oh, I'm the majority writer at this point. So, and then this is someone else's, like, I don't know who this is, Tatiana Siegel. She says, but other project insiders say Solomon and McQuarrie wrote the majority of what wound up on screen with contributions from Hayter. David Hayter says, Ralph went to Peter Rice and said, look, here's the deal. David, the phone guy, has been writing the script. You have to make a deal with him or we are in serious legal jeopardy. Peter called me into his office and offered me $35,000 and said, that's all you're ever going to get. Be happy with it. Weird, right? Aggressive. Nah. This is the part of Hollywood I just hate.
This guy hasn't done anything wrong.
I know. It's like
hasn't done anything wrong.
I don't know if it's like gatekeeping, like being in the Writers Guild or like having credit, but yeah. So David Hayter was like, I might literally write this movie and get zero credit for it. So can you just put me in the movie so I can remember that I was on this project? Which is cool that he got to be in it. Hayter says that Joss wrote a draft of the script while I was writing the script because the studio didn't have any confidence in me because I've never written anything before. And Lauren Schuler Donner says Whedon's draft had humor in it. Bryan wanted this movie to be much more serious and more dramatic. David Hayter said, fortunately, Bryan was like, the tone doesn't really fit for me, talking about Whedon's. But there were a few things that we took from Joss's draft that were so good. One of them was the first scene between Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. I think it's beautifully done. I think the actors are incredible. Bryan Singer, like I said, got shouted out by Peter Rice for making a movie called Public Access, which got into Sundance in 1993. And then Peter Rice, the young British executive at 20th Century Fox, saw it and was a fan. Peter Rice said, I saw Public Access and I thought it was an astonishing film by a young first-time filmmaker. That was kind of my shtick at the time. I get to go to film festivals. I met this whole new generation of storytellers, and invariably, I could be the first person from a major studio to say, I like your stuff. That's kind of like the history of how it got brought to Bryan Singer, how it got tossed around between 8 different writers. And then you have this guy who's in the production office answering phones, and then Singer's like a guy who banned comic books on set, but then he refers to Tom DeSanto, who knows X-Men, and David Hayter, this random-ass non-union person who also knows X-Men lore, to write the script. So that's what I was talking about when it was a little bit ass backwards, because you're saying you don't want the source material on set, but then you're referring to guys who know the source material really well.
I don't know why you wouldn't want source material on set unless you were that egotistical where you think, I'm going to create the new image of the X-Men. I want people to forget the old comic book X-Men, and I want this to be the new version of the X-Men, which is weird.
It's super weird. Sorry to go on a writer's room tangent. Nick, who is in this movie for us?
James, this is where the movie really shines because, spoiler for my beliefs and thoughts on this movie, you couldn't have cast this any better. So we have Hugh Jackman, Sir Patrick Stewart, I believe Sir Ian McKellen, right? He's knighted.
Double sirred up.
Yeah, double sirred up. We got Halle Berry. We got James Marsden, a whole host of others, but I had to stop at 5 there.
Yeah, it was too stacked. It was cast very well. Very impressive.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who still, when somebody hears Professor X, you still think of Patrick Stewart. And Hugh Jackman's been Wolverine now for 23 years. 26, yeah. I mean, he just keeps going. I'm trying to think, is he still Wolverine? Is he going to be in Doomsday?
He'll show up.
Okay,
I'm sure he will.
Then yeah,
I am sure he will show up again.
I'd be shocked if he didn't. If you bring back the original X-Men and he's not part of it, I'd be very surprised. But
if you bring back James Marsden, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Rebecca Romijn, and Alan Cumming, I'm pretty sure Hugh Jackman, who just showed up in the movie 2 years ago, is coming back.
Okay.
Anyway. I know we don't know, but it's got to be easy money to bet that,
When you cast a guy in a role in 2000 and he's still that character 26 years later, and you couldn't imagine, like, in my lifetime, if they ever redo Wolverine, I'll boycott it because # not my Wolverine. So
no, we got to give the new one hope. He can't do it. Well, he will do it till he's 90. But when he turns 91, we got to get a new Wolverine, even though I'm going to miss him so much.
No, I'm becoming that old guy.
It's like when you have a dynasty team and then you get that new roster when all the all-stars have left. You're just like, you're not that team. You're not my team, though.
I'm going to be the guy who will never let go of like Jordan being the best. You could present me with every statistical argument. I'd be like, not even close. Sorry.
There you go. This one's for the old heads. Nick, what is the dollar situation with this movie? I already kind of dropped the budget, but remind us.
You brought up the budget. So we have an estimated about $75 million on the budget. Our worldwide box office coming in at 296, just a touch over that actually. So $296 million box office worldwide. As with a lot of comic book stuff back then, I think we've gone over this before, but huge international monies on this one. 296.3 million is technical worldwide. Only 157 million of that coming out of domestic US and Canada. So you're talking about another 140 million. So about a 55-45 split on the money there, domestic international. What I thought was really interesting was only making back 54 million on opening weekend, which is usually what a blockbuster movie like this, you expect a little more. Came out July 16th. You're talking summer blockbuster, X-Men. People are clamoring for the superheroes, and a little light on that. So it felt like maybe something everyone was a little hesitant about. Opening weekend came, got the reviews of, no, guys, this is not your 1994 Fantastic Four. This is a lot better. Crazy to think it's only 6 years apart.
We didn't know about that.
We didn't know about it, but it's insane to think it's only 6 years apart. And
yes.
But yeah,
also
great showing.
Great contrast of a $1 million budget and a times 75 version of that will do to a movie.
But that's showbiz, baby.
That's showbiz. And it's also weird, like Bryan Singer, because he is an issue. I don't know if you knew much about Bryan Singer. I did mention to you off the pod when we were going to watch X-Men. I said, this guy has his long, lengthy history of problems. Just a brief overview of the guy. He has a lengthy history of drug use and sexual abuse. Singer has been accused of rape and assault by men, which includes young men who were minors at the time of those sexual encounters, allegedly. Singer, of course, has denied all claims of sexual abuse. And you can do your own deep diving of this topic. There's many articles covering it. I'm going to reference a couple of those articles. One of them being the Hollywood Reporter's article titled Bryan Singer's Traumatic X-Men Set. The movie created a monster. So behind the scenes, this is going to get into this movie specifically and also the sexual abuse allegations. And then I'll go into some other articles that detail more of that, because it's hard to watch this movie and not think about that for me. I am an advocate of separating art from artist, but it's almost like, I'm not saying this guy deserves forgiveness. I guess everyone could if you're a Christian or whatever, but there's forgive and there's forget. Like, you could forgive somebody, but you can't forget it. So like whenever I'm watching, I'm like, when I see this one guy on screen, I'm going to think about that traumatic thing that happened to him. Or when I see Bryan Singer's name on the credits, I'm going to think about how he is a 99.9% probably a terrible person. Behind the scenes, crisis raged, including drug use, tantrums, and a writer's feud. Adding to the drama, one of the film's actors filed a civil suit 4 months after production wrapped, claiming that he was raped by 3 of Singer's friends and business associates, although none of them were involved with X-Men. Lauren Schuler-Donner says, "It's a weird business, the film business. We honor creativity and talent, and we forgive the brilliant ones. Unconsciously, we probably do enable them by turning a blind eye to whatever they're doing and taking their product and putting it out to the world." I think that sums up Hollywood and all these creatives and all their fucking weird problems perfectly, because it is like shitty to me, because I thought this movie was good. And as far as I can tell, Bryan Singer did a good job at directing this movie, despite being an awful person. So it's like, why can't you just be no, you don't even have to be like nice. You could be kind of brash, kind of a dick, but just be a decent person. Like, is that hard?
Don't assault people. Yeah, I think it's a reasonable request.
If you have immense talent and you're in a privileged position, why is it so hard to maintain that privilege and just be a fine human being? I don't know. Nick, you're throwing your arms up like you got no answers, because neither do I. Continuing that article, a number of young men, including some of who were minors at the time, have claimed in published interviews that Singer would dangle X-Men auditions and roles in exchange for sex. And I will circle back to that regarding a friend of the show. So, Nick, for this movie specifically, Alex Burton played Pyro in this movie and ultimately is going to get recast in X2, 99.9%, probably because of what I'm about to tell you. So from that Hollywood Reporter article, it says, quote, "No one remembers how Burton, who had no previous credits, was cast. One source says Burton told him, Mark Collins Rector and Bryan Singer created that role for me. Another source says Burton was flown up to the Toronto set from Los Angeles, an unheard of move given the size of his role. Studios typically cast locals for talent with one or no lines. 8 days after X-Men's Ellis Island premiere on July 12, 2000, Burton filed a civil suit against 3 of Singer's friends and business associates in the digital entertainment network venture. This was a youth-skewing-multimedia.com and precursor to YouTube. Collins Rector, Chad Shackley, and Brock Pierce. Pierce was later dropped as a defendant, claiming that he had been plied with drugs, sexually assaulted by the trio at the DEN outpost in Encino, held against his will, and threatened with physical harm between July 1999 and May 2000, a period that encompasses X-Men's 6-month production. According to the suit, Burton was also an employee of DEN, the Digital Entertainment Network, during the time frame. The suit, which did not name Singer, also declares that Collins Rector threatened to use his power and influence in the entertainment industry to prevent Burton from gaining employment in the field of entertainment.
Jeez.
Did you ever see that Dan Schneider doc?
Which one?
Dan Schneider is like a Nickelodeon executive, and there's this whole documentary about him being kind of sus with his actions and his motives, and just an inner circle of enablers of people who just would sexually abuse minors. And it was eye-opening. And when I was working in LA, I would hear about these stories and I was like, that's crazy. And then people would say, it happens all the time. You know, this person happened to them. You know, this person happened. I'm like, fuck, dude, what the hell is going on with Hollywood?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I know it's not uncommon, unfortunately, for a lot of that stuff to happen, but especially back then, back before social media, people weren't speaking out as much. There was just, you didn't really know who these Hollywood people were behind closed doors because, you know, you need a reporter to report on it. And there, you know, it was just all a very incestuous business at the time.
So continuing from the article, although the suit generated press at the time, there was little discussion about why Burton did not turn for the sequel, X2, X-Men United, in which Pyro's character was expanded and played by actor Aaron Stanford. Burton, who has changed his name, has never appeared in another Hollywood project. So when you're watching this movie and you see that small scene, he's in a couple scenes, I think, doesn't say a lot, you're just like, fuck, man, this poor kid, just is traumatized. He is scarred by Hollywood. This might have been a dream of his. And then I bet, you can't watch this movie without being traumatized if you're him, which is just shitty. According to one Project Insider, the only recollection was, quote, he wasn't very good. A rep for Singer says Alex Burton was a terrific day player as a young Pyro. But when it came to doing the sequel, Bryan needed the character of Pyro to appear older and go through a darker transition where he ultimately becomes a villain. Since movie time had elapsed since the first X-Men, Aaron Stanford was the right choice. Another source says Collins Rector and Shackley visited the set at least once. Months earlier, the former had been hit with a civil suit claiming that he sexually abused a 13-year-old. Burton, who was joined by 2 others in the Den suit, was awarded $6 million. But the amount was never paid. And in November 2019, Burton's lawyer filed a renewal of judgment against Collins Rector and Shackley, citing an additional $4.8 million in accrued interest. That's the sad part that happens on this movie specifically. And
oh my God.
Unfortunately, I have to expand upon the lengthy history of Singer's sexual allegation troubles, which apparently he's super innocent about.
Yeah, I did. While you were explaining that, I just did a quick little Google search because when you mentioned the Nickelodeon doc, it kind of sparked something in my head. There was one guy, Brian Peck, who was an acting coach, and I remember hearing an interview with Drake Bell from Drake and Josh, who has his legal troubles, but he was molested when he was coming up, and it was this Brian Peck guy. So I go, what's up with Brian Peck and Bryan Singer?
He was the pickle guy from all that.
Yeah. And so I looked up, Bryan Singer, Brian Peck. What's they're just best buds. And Brian Peck, that guy, has a cameo here in X-Men as a hot dog vendor.
Oh my God. Yes, next to Stan Lee. Stan Lee is the vendor, I believe. And I think Brian Peck is the guy taking the hot dog. Holy shit, dude. Yeah. There's also someone else. Dude, that's like the minus Stan Lee. That's like the pedophile cameo scene.
Yeah.
Because in the background of that is Gary Goddard, who is another Hollywood director who also has sexual abuse allegations against him, against young men. He was the director of the original Masters of the Universe. That's insane that Brian Peck and Gary Goddard were in the same scene, if not the same shot. If they're in the same shot, I'll throw it up on the screen. But that almost seems like,
it's not a coincidence.
Psychotic. That seems psychotic to me, like psychotic behavior.
Yeah, like almost like, hey, look at us.
Yeah, no, I'm totally recognizing Brian Peck from that scene, but I'd misplaced him from the Dan Schneider doc because he was the pickle guy. What was his name? It was like Pickle Man. I think he was Pickle Man. Pickle Boy. That was it. Brian Peck was Pickle Boy on all that. That was insane watching that documentary when they're like, you'll never believe who went through all this. And then Drake Bell sits down in front of the camera and then they cut the episode and then they start the next episode and it's all about Drake Bell's experience. It's like, oh my God, dude, this is like, I'm surprised he's still okay from that.
Apparently Brian Peck joined Bryan Singer on the DVD commentary for X-Men, the 1.5 edition.
Why?
Following Peck's 2003 arrest, Bryan Singer wrote letters of support for him during his sentencing. Dude,
that was in the documentary.
Yes.
They highlighted the letters of support by like actors and stuff. Some of them were like people who had no idea that he was a actual predator and they sincerely thought he was innocent. But yeah, some of those.
James Marsden
I remember that being in there, probably because he was on the X-Men set. They're like, oh, this guy's so cool. But it wasn't a good look for those guys. I think Ryder Strong was another one.
Yeah.
Sean from Boy Meets World was the one that wrote letters of support. Now that, if I'm recalling from the documentary, that is, wow, my mind is blown right now.
Dude, this is too much. So now Bryan Singer's even more guilty in my head because you're hanging out with these folks. These are your friends. You don't hang out with these people and write letters of support for them.
Shut the fuck up. I'm not buying your shit. Well,
no.
Let me keep going on with this shit.
Expose him, James.
A BBC article from June 13th, 2019, director Bryan Singer settles with rape accuser. Director Bryan Singer has agreed to an out-of-court settlement with a man who accused the filmmaker of raping him as a teenager. Cesar Sanchez Guzman accused Singer of sexually assaulting him on a yacht in 2003 when he was 17. He alleged Singer lured him into a secluded area and forced him to perform sexual acts before raping him. Sanchez Guzman sued Singer in 2017, alleging sexual harassment, which Singer denied. Singer's lawyer says he never knew him before he made the accusation and didn't commit the alleged act. Bryan Singer would pay $150,000 to Cesar Sanchez Guzman, who filed for bankruptcy in 2014. The money would be used to pay Sanchez Guzman's debts and cover costs. Amid these allegations, Singer was working as the director of an Academy Award-nominated movie, Bohemian Rhapsody, in which he was fired from due to his unreliable behavior. The director was later removed from the film's BAFTA Awards nomination due to allegations he sexually abused underage boys. An article published by The Atlantic and written by Alex French and Maximilian Potter detailed a string of allegations from multiple anonymous men who claimed to have been sexually assaulted by Singer, some of which include one anonymous person claimed he was 15 when Singer had sex with them. Another claimed Singer knew he was 17 and still had sex with them. A third stated he had a sexual relationship with the director starting at the age of 17 and described him as a predator who would stick his hands down your pants without your consent. Another claimed Singer repeatedly molested him on the set of a 1998 film, Apt Pupil. That's the one I shouted out before. The Hollywood Reporter article I referenced earlier stated that 2 boys, one 14 and one 17, filed a civil lawsuit claiming they were ordered to strip naked for a scene, and at least 2 other actors made similar allegations in separate civil suits, with one claiming that he would be fired if he refused to perform nude. Nick, I don't need any words from you. The look on your face says it all, but I do want a sidebar right here, because going off that last bullet point I just read to you, Nick, friend of the show, Matthew Lawrence from Horse Sense and Jumping Ship,
Of course.
on the Brotherly Love podcast, in which he does with his brothers, Joey and Andrew, also friends of the show, revealed that his agency fired him after not taking his clothes off for this director who requested it in a hotel room. Matter of fact, Nick, I got the clip. Let's watch the short from the Brotherly Love podcast.
Here we go.
There's been many times in my life where I've been propositioned to get a huge role. I've lost my agency because I went to the hotel room, which I can't believe they would send me to, of a very prominent Oscar award-winning director who showed up in his robe, asked me to take my clothes off and said he needed to take Polaroids of me, and that if I did X, Y, and Z, I would be the next Marvel character. I didn't do that, and my agency fired me because I left this director's room. A lot of my other male friends have gone through with both men and women in this industry, but there's a double standard, and this is where I bring Terry Crews. Terry Crews comes out and says it, people are laughing at him. They kick him out. Why? Because he's a man that represents masculinity, and I think our society is less ready to hear that situation going on with men than they are with women, actually. Look.
So he doesn't name drop Bryan Singer, but
Marvel role.
also he was on the X-Men set. So he's not in the movie, but he has stories about being on the set and watching Hugh Jackman work as Wolverine.
You know those BTS moments of the first X-Men Wolverine performance that he did, and he said he was nervous and this and that. So crazy thing is I was on the set. We were in that moment when he goes in the camera, I was standing like 8 feet to the side for that. And I'm thinking how much time has passed and how on the set, how truly nervous
99, 2000.
he was.
It was 2000, I think.
To portray that character. He was genuinely, like, it was obvious. He was genuinely
nervous,
deeply affected by how it was going to come off.
Well, he was a newcomer at that point.
So crazy.
You know.
So instead of going through that demoralizing experience, Matthew Lawrence kept his dignity, and instead of being an X-Men, we got him in Jumping Ship, baby.
Good for him. And fuck his agency, man.
It's got a low score from us, but happy he kept his dignity. Jumping Ship
to bump that up.
was a 3.75. I might bump it up to an 8 for his bravery. Yeah, man, that's what's up with the agency? What does the agency have to gain from that?
If you're getting roles, if you're getting like a talent agency, if you're out there able to get your clients into these roles, into these big blockbuster movies, and you get in with this director where, hey, this director uses our agency to get his talent, then I guess that would be appealing. But I mean, the fact that nobody blew a whistle, man, it makes me question so many people who probably still are floating around Hollywood. Yeah, it just pisses me off.
There's not much more you can say.
Yeah.
But Singer can say a lot because he called that Atlantic article a homophobic smear piece, and that it was very timely coming out during the release of Bohemian Rhapsody. Nick, I think the you just hate me because I'm gay excuse is running dry in the 2020s, because this is not the 1990s. We're cool with everybody. Bryan Singer can't be like, oh, it's because I'm gay. Like, you hate me. It's like, no, it's because you're a fucking shitty person who commits crimes. That's why we hate you. Alan Cumming, who plays Nightcrawler in the next movie, is bisexual, and he's awesome. We don't hate him because he's gay or bisexual. In fact, we don't hate him at all. We hate you because you're a fucking shitty person.
Yeah, somebody else tried that? Was it Kevin Spacey?
Kevin Spacey, he did the Kevin Spacey strat before Kevin Spacey.
Well, he directed Usual Suspects.
He's like, I'm gay, sue me.
He directed Usual Suspects with Kevin Spacey in there. Yeah, he's just like, you know what? You're right. This is a good moment for me to come out as gay. It's like, this is not the time for that. First of all, we kind of figured now with these allegations, and 2, you're a criminal. You don't get to just be like, all right, I'm walking off into the sunset.
My father-in-law, Mark Boucher, was invited into a Kevin Spacey's trailer by Kevin Spacey as a young 20-year-old. And he's like, no.
Get him back on the pod.
But I should bring it. Yeah, we got to ask him about that. I will add that the article was published by The Atlantic after it was initially not published by Esquire, which is where Alex and Max worked. Those are the writers of the article. Esquire is a magazine publication owned by the Hearst Corporation. Remember that name. PBS interviewed one of the writers of the article, Alex French, and this is what he had to say.
Alex, we should mention you and Max were first reporting this for another publication, for Esquire, where you both also work and write for. And you clarified in a statement later that it went through a fact-checking process there. They decided not to run it. Executives there decided not to run it before you took it to The Atlantic, where it was eventually run. Do you know why it wasn't run originally in Esquire, why they killed it?
So it is true that the story was conceived of and assigned by Esquire magazine, which is owned by the Hearst Corporation. It's also true that we went through the full editorial process at Esquire, including fact-checking and an extensive legal vetting process. When all of that was done, our story had the full support and endorsement of Esquire's editor-in-chief, Jay Fielden, and Michael Haney. He's the executive editorial director. Those guys fought hard for this story. In the end, it was killed by executives at Hearst, and we don't know why. We were not provided any sort of rationale.
Collusion. Alex French, what's up?
Oh, I was going to say, obviously, Bryan Singer is working in Hollywood still at this time. All of these allegations, these studios are still hiring him to do things like Bohemian Rhapsody, which they know is a big movie, and they know his past. I mean, I'm sure everybody behind the scenes knows about this guy, and he's still being protected and being put out there, so not surprising.
Alex French said it was not a long conversation of bringing the article to The Atlantic, as in his words, it has a well-earned reputation for journalistic excellence. So according to a BBC article from 2019, Singer had this to say about the Atlantic article. After careful fact-checking and in consideration of a lack of credible sources, Esquire chose not to publish this piece of vendetta journalism. That didn't stop this writer from selling it to The Atlantic. It's sad that The Atlantic would stoop to this low standard of journalistic integrity. Again, I am forced to reiterate that this story rehashes claims from bogus lawsuits filed by a disreputable cast of individuals willing to lie for money or attention. And it is no surprise that, with Bohemian Rhapsody being an award-winning hit, this homophobic smear piece, that's the term that we referenced earlier, has been conveniently timed to take advantage of its success. So PBS asked Alex French what he thinks of Singer's response to that article, to which French says,
he also said the timing is suspect here. He has a big movie out right now, claims you're getting attention by publishing this right now. What do you have to say to that?
So in the past, when confronted with these sorts of allegations, Mr. Singer has always reverted to, cheap tactics, misdirection, counter-accusations, victim shaming. I think his statement in October when he first caught wind of the story and yesterday really failed to address very detailed accusations made by the men in this story. They just don't hold water.
I love the whole, my buddies didn't publish this at Esquire, and I'm going to use that as, Esquire figured this wasn't worth sharing. It's like, dude.
It's just like politics. Like something goes weird, whether it's by coincidence or some string pulling in the background, and that's your one argument that you are hinging onto, and you're just saying the same old stuff to deflect and avoid the real problem. We see it in politics all the time. Someone's like, hey, what do you have to say about this? And they're like, oh, well, there's an impeding on the blah, blah, blah. It's like, just answer the question.
They did a whole congressional investigation. You're like, I don't trust that. So what are we talking about here?
I'll wrap it up going back to the Hollywood Reporter and going back to this movie specifically. So despite all the sexual assault allegations, he was also just an insane person to be around. He was addicted to painkillers. His drug use led to late arrivals to the set, mood swings, and explosive tantrums. Some of the characters, like Romaine's Mystique, required hours of body painting before filming. On a whim, Singer would decide not to use her in a scene. His erratic behavior on the set of the sequel, X2, actually did lead the X-Men cast in full costume to confront Singer about his actions. So from that article, Singer's behavior grew erratic and destructive, culminating in a fight between the director and DeSanto. So that's his story by homie, the producing partner. And DeSanto wanted to shut down production. Sources who were present say DeSanto attempted to halt shooting when he learned that Singer was incapacitated after taking a narcotic. Some crew members had taken the same drug, and DeSanto became fearful that someone on set could get injured. All of the main cast, with the exception of McKellen, were in the scene that day, which takes place in the X-Jet and comes near the end of the movie. But Singer was defiant and continued shooting, leading to a botched stunt that left Jackman bleeding on camera, because there was no stunt coordinator present as the scene was supposed to be shot the following day. Ralph Winter, the producer, who had the authority to stop production, did so. But the next day, the studio appeared to side with Singer and told DeSanto to return to Los Angeles. That prompted the main cast members, minus McKellen and Romaine, all dressed in their full X-Men costumes, to converge in Singer's trailer and confront him, threatening to quit if DeSanto left. That's when Halle Berry famously said to Bryan Singer, "You can kiss my black ass," a line that has been oft reported in the years since, but never with the correct backstory. And I'm going to leave it with this Lauren Schuler Donner quote. "You have to understand the guy was brilliant. That was why we all tolerated him. If he wasn't so fucked up, he would be a really great director."
If my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bike. Hey, what are we talking about here?
And that is why this director is an early nomination for the worst director of the year. Although the movie wasn't bad, that's the thing that's crazy about it. It's still, like, from our pre-pops, we like this movie.
Yeah, if I didn't know anything about that, I'd say it's a fine movie. He doesn't deserve worst director.
But I don't think I don't think I see the movie in a different light in its quality and how much I like it. It's just something I can't avoid thinking about.
No, not at all.
And with that, it's time to read the log line and get into plot talk. I'll do us the honors since you are a little sick boy. Nick, our log line is: in a world where mutants, in parentheses, evolved superpowered humans, close parentheses, exist and are discriminated against, two groups form an inevitable clash: the Supremacist Brotherhood and the Pacifist X-Men.
All right, James, we're going to start this movie off in a really powerful scene here. We are actually at a concentration camp in World War II. This is a flashback for a young Magneto, and he's discovering his powers because we learn that a lot of powers come out during times of deep emotional stress. Young Magneto here is when he's a boy watching his mother get taken away by the Nazis. He's trying to reach after her, and in that process, he pulls down a whole metal gate. This is all the backstory we're going to get for Magneto. There's obviously more, but I think as far as time on screen to understanding a villain's arc, this has got to be up there on the ratio.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And actually, this is from Christopher McQuarrie's draft. So he wrote that introductory scene of the concentration camp, and David Hayter, our Solid Snake, said it was so good that it had to be in the movie. It was basically unchanged from McQuarrie's version.
And then we're going to go ahead and contrast that with present day. We're going to get another high emotion scene, but much lower stakes. So we're going to be introduced to Rogue here, and she is hanging out with her boyfriend. They're talking about running away. She's super happy. She's super in love. She goes in for a passionate kiss. When she kisses her boyfriend, pretty much puts him into a coma because Rogue's power, as we find out, is any physical touch with her skin. She drains the energy and life from the person that she is touching. I don't think it works on animals. That'd be sad if you couldn't pet a dog, but hey, here we are. Yeah, no, I just really kind of threw one for you.
That is sad. You can never pet a dog ever again. That sucks.
Yeah.
We do get to this scene. We catch up with a modern day Magneto, and it's going to be at this congressional hearing here with Jean Grey, who is our mutants, who is our future Dark Phoenix of the X-Men. She's advocating for mutant rights as a professional scientist, doctor person. Professor X is in the crowd, and I think it's cool that while Senator Kelly, who is kind of our human bad guy in this movie, he is talking about how mutants are dangerous. There's a girl who can walk through walls, and what if they decide to do that on the White House? Some of them can even perform mind control. And then right as he says that, he's in the background, and we get the back of Sir Patrick Stewart's head in the foreground because he is the mutant who can read minds and control minds. Good little composition cinematography. Nick, did you know that Michael Jackson advocated to play Professor X in this movie?
Michael Jackson. Like pop star, king of pop, Michael Jackson.
Yep.
Wow. I can't even picture it. I can't even picture
just imagine Michael Jackson and Ian McKellen having that fantastic exchange after this congressional scene.
Oh, Eric,
you're being too hard on the humans. They'll learn.
That's a 10 out of 10.
I was going to say, I have a quote from the Hollywood Reporter article. You can also rate my accent or my impression. So from that Hollywood Reporter article, opening text, actually, this is like what the article opens up with from the problematic set created a monster. They said, in the spring of 1999, Bryan Singer and a group of X-Men producers and a crew were working out of the old Fox offices near Olympic and Bundy. I think I worked at those offices, actually, when Michael Jackson walked in the door, wearing sunglasses and refusing to shake hands. Jackson was visiting the industrial space to meet with Singer to discuss the prospect of playing Professor Xavier in the upcoming film. I said to him, this is Lauren Schuler Donner saying this to him, do you know Xavier is an older white guy? And Michael said, oh yeah, I can wear makeup. Bryan Singer. I took on X-Men because of the thematics of where it was interesting to me. I saw Xavier and Magneto, played by Sir Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in the modern day, as we're seeing in the scene, as a Martin Luther King Jr. and a Malcolm X type character. I'm gay or bisexual, whatever. So that probably also factored into the decision to direct X-Men because mutancy is discovered during puberty. When you're different from your whole neighborhood and your family, you feel very isolated. Now, I did really see the comparison that Singer said there with Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, because Magneto, way more extremist tactics, is kind of like an advocate for his kind by any means necessary, doing what you need to do to get quote unquote progression in his eyes. Whereas Charles Xavier is a little bit more of a pacifist, like the logline said. And he's like, hey, we got to do this the right way. We can't just come in guns a-blazing because then they're not going to accept us at all. And then Magneto's like, dude, I was in the fucking Holocaust. My parents got stripped away from me. I got this number tattooed on my arm. This is where I think the X-Men property shines with this type of dynamic with its relationship to humanity. And B, I think it's at its best when humans are the main bad guy.
Yeah, and we were talking about it off the pod. A very interesting thing that happens in this movie, which is not going to get brought up a lot. I don't know if they really cared to play into it or they just thought, hey, the audience will pick up on this, is obviously Magneto having gone through the Holocaust, and which is basically an ethnic cleansing for a superior race, right? That was the idea of it. And now Magneto's becoming that figure who's saying, we are now the superior race. We need to wipe out humanity because they're inferior to us. And so it's the victim becoming the villain growth arc, which I thought, could have been explored a little more, but I didn't need to be. There was already a lot going on in the movie. But it's very interesting. And but I can't get over Michael. How problematic would that set have been?
Can you imagine?
How much more problematic would that set have been with Michael Jackson there? I mean,
dysfunctional, straight up dysfunction.
Goodness.
So picture Michael Jackson whenever there's a scene with Patrick Stewart, just picture Michael Jackson in the chair.
Oh God, I can't. Okay.
I'm in your head, Eric. Just learn love, Eric. You have to love our neighbors, love our humans.
I can't believe he actually thought he could pull that one off.
I'm going into Cerebro.
What is Cerebro?
Gene, I'm moonwalking in Cerebro land.
I can't. Okay. Well, James, at this congressional hearing, we get introduced to our main human bad guy, and this is going to be Senator Kelly. So Senator Kelly is trying to introduce this thing called the Mutant Registration Act. I would say this is the small baby idea behind what Marvel would later do with the Superhero Registration Act in Captain America Civil War, and really kind of drove forward a lot of the
Sokovia Accords. Yeah.
But James, I'm just going to put this out there. And again, we get that Senator Kelly's a bad guy because he says more things behind the scenes of he's very, we'll call him bigoted towards the mutants. But I don't know. I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, if mutants were in this world and I was just a citizen of the United States, normal person, and I know that, hey, there are these really dangerous people out there. Time and time again throughout the movie, we get proven just how dangerous they are to humanity all the time. And you're like, yeah, these people could walk through walls, control your minds. They could blow up entire buildings. Some of them just can't even die. I'd be thinking to myself, you know what? This guy might have a little bit of a point. Like, we got to look at it a little bit through humanity's eyes. If you were that guy, kind of like in the Fantastic Four movie where we're saying, yeah, if I was in the crowd, I might be like, give him the baby.
In First Steps? Yeah.
In First Steps. Yeah, I would be that guy.
Yeah,
so a little bit through the people's eyes.
That always makes for a better story is when there's two sides to the story and you can explore both sides and be like, I kind of see a point here, but they do kind of just paint the picture like Senator Kelly and his proposition is bad and everything about it is bad. But there is good reason behind it, and I know what you're saying. But obviously, we're watching a mutant movie and we're rooting for the mutants, and we don't want them to be treated poorly from this bigot. Yeah, it's and it's just like, no, we don't like that, and we want everyone to be nice, and we're sick of this shit. But it's kind of like, chalk it up to, like you said, your 3 words of the time when we kind of just got to get the show on the road. We're not going to get all philosophical.
Yeah.
We're going to get, no, it's not, because there's no comic books on set, Nick. What are you talking about? This is serious and dark, and Singer's an artist. This is kind of like back in the time where you're like, we just got to get the ball rolling, get to the good stuff, which is, I assume, is why there's so many rewrites, and, you want to nail it and have those compelling storylines, but also show the characters from this comic book franchise that fans love and adore and want to go to the theaters and see.
Exactly. They want the mutants, damn it. Well, we have another mutant that we saw recently. This is Rogue. So after she puts her boyfriend into a coma, she freaks out.
This is Anna Paquin, by the way.
Well, she is up in Canada when before she got her powers, her and her boyfriend were talking about driving up to Alaska. This was their thing. She goes, I want to get up to the cold. I want to go up to the mountains and be isolated. So this is now her time to do that because she's on the run. She doesn't know what's going on. She's dangerous. She doesn't want to be around anybody because she doesn't want to hurt them. And she's going to run into our main hunk.
And Hugh Jackman was kind of an unknown at this point. He didn't have that many roles. And I think Russell Crowe was up for the role of Logan. And he passed it up probably due to like a schedule conflict. And then he recommended Hugh Jackman. And that just changed his life probably forever and our expectations of Wolverine forever.
Absolutely. Again, you talk about perfect casting. I can't imagine anyone else. Not even Michael Jackson could take this from him.
What if Michael Jackson was Logan? that'd be way worse than Professor X.
Come get it, bub.
I think the older Hugh Jackman gets, the more jacked man he gets, because he's not super jacked in this one. He's
a huge jacked man.
He's not huge Jackman in this one. He's Hugh Jackman, but as he will progress in this role, he will become huge jacked man.
You know how in Rocky 1 he was looking kind of ripped, and then in Rocky 2 he got real big.
He got all shredded up.
So you look.
And I like in this introductory scene with Logan, we hear these metal clanks from the punches to kind of give the audience like a clue that he's got some sort of metal skeleton. And everyone's like, oh, like that's a cool clue. But then I feel like that never comes up ever again in another movie. In the third act, Nick, you did point out something that has a metal clank, and we'll get to that. But he's just like in a bar fight. People are betting on him. This is like the Randy Savage 3 minutes of playtime, except he's the guy having fun. And then after this bar fight, Logan is going to be sitting at the bar, going to talk with Rogue, and then some guys are going to come up and give him some trouble. And this is where we first see the adamantium claws get busted out. And there's a cool practical effect of like him stabbing a guy up against a post, and then the middle claw comes out, and it looks like it's probably a prosthetic and like just a metal blade. So I'm sure they had like stunt blades. They probably had visual effects, CGI blades, but I thought those were really cool, really good looking. And we get this movie has a lot of really cool moments with characters. So spoilers, I think besides the bar cage fight, I wasn't a huge fan of like the combat scenes, like the fight scenes. I felt like they were a little clunky. The wire work is a little out of pocket. So like that's going to be my two nitpicks. And some of the visual effects, I feel like the Cyclops rays were a little bit not quite ready, honestly.
Yeah, they weren't quite ready. There's a few times with the claws, sometimes with Magneto, they bend a little bit. Those look really rubbery.
Well, like there's that one point where he has like Logan in like a Jesus pose and he's like purposely like bending the blades outwards. Is that what you're talking about?
No. I'm talking about the final scene when he's trying to punch through the machine. And it's
it had like a weird like visual flex, like
yeah, you could tell in the old CGI when like the shading's not quite right on the object. It happened. It's 2000, right? I'm giving it a pass, but for the most part, like you're saying, I didn't mind any of it. Mystique was great, by the way. The effects on Mystique,
yeah, Mystique's effect was great. My only gripes was just like some of Cyclops' like rays, but honestly, not terrible.
The ray that hit Magneto at the end is not good. Anyway.
But yeah, after this bar fight, Logan and Rogue are going to hit the road. Rogue is going to be a stowaway in Logan's trailer, and then he's going to take her in the truck. But then they're going to be attacked by Sabretooth, who I think is his brother from X-Men Origins, Wolverine.
We learned later on, yeah.
But then he like lost his memory, so yeah. But this is Tyler Mane, a WWE wrestler at the time. I just think this movie's so funny because it has Sir Patrick Stewart, Sir Ian McKellen, an unknown Hugh Jackman, and then like a WWE wrestling guy, and then like a stunt guy plays Toad. It's just like, what an eclectic, diverse categories of actors you have in this film. But it all worked. I think it all worked perfectly.
Absolutely.
We're going to get Halle Berry, who is fresh off an Oscar win, playing Storm, and Scott Summers' Cyclops, played by James Marsden. They're going to rescue them and take them to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters.
Wolverine is going to wake up. He's not going to know where he is. Jean Grey wakes him up. He freaks out. Again, this is a guy who's been living on the run, constantly in danger, doesn't trust anybody.
When he wakes up, he kind of just instinctively like rips off the test tubes, the wires, frees himself because subconsciously he does have this experience in his mind. Speaking of the memory loss and the traumatic event that was blocked out of his memory, he was experimented on and got that adamantium skeleton put into his body, which is going to get explored in the next movie. So it's understandable how he flips out at that. Also, I like that they give Professor X a little bit of fun character because, sometimes it just feels like he's like a distinguished guy, just like saying the noble stuff, but he's in Logan's mind and he's saying like, oh, look over here, go this way. Where's that voice coming from? And it's fun. It's like, like I like when we have our Dumbledore type character, but he can have some fun.
Yeah.
I like that scene. And then he leads him right to his office. And this is where we get a scene with Charles Xavier meeting Logan, and Scott Summers comes in. And this is where we get the kind of like pointing fun at comic book movies, like these early 2000s movies felt like they needed to do, because they say, oh, I'm Charles Xavier. I also go by, Professor X. And I see you've met Scott Summers. He goes by Cyclops. And an all-time ad lib here by Hugh Jackman. When he looks at Charles Xavier and says, what do they call you? Wheels? That was supposed to be, what do they call you? Baldy? But Hugh Jackman went there, and it got a genuine laugh for me, because it was it was very rude, but it was funny.
There's a couple of one-liners. They're a little like eye-rolly cheesy, but they work in this movie. And that's definitely, I think that might be the best one.
Because that was funny.
Yeah. In the background, James, we have Magneto still and his brotherhood made up of Mystique, Toad, and then our friend Sabretooth. And they have this plot. They're going to turn world leaders into mutants using this crazy device, because they're saying, all right, you guys are scared of mutants. I'm going to turn you into what you're scared of.
Yeah, I got to say, for someone who wanted to make this movie very grounded and serious and dark and whatever, I feel like the X-Men, and we'll see their costumes in the third act, about how they're not reflective of their comic book look at all. But for some reason, they got no problem going full 90s villain lair with Magneto's place. they kind of have ridiculous appearances. Like Sabretooth has big eyebrows and like the big fur coats. And so like they didn't hold back there. So were they thinking, oh, let's test it out on the villains and see if it gets a good reaction? Because even Magneto has like his cool helmet on and has a cape. So it's like, why couldn't we do that for our heroes? Who knows?
Yeah, he looks like the classic Magneto. He walks around in like boots and like the leather. Like when he walks down a hall, you can hear him like click, clack, click, clack. Very ominous, tropey villain.
Speaking of click, clack, just seeing this movie for multiple times, you know, I know what happens. I know the vibe. I know I enjoy this movie. So I was trying to look at the small details of this movie. So there's that Newton's cradle on Magneto's desk, the little swinging balls that are always on some executive's office for some reason. Mm-hmm. So this is such a badass detail because you'll notice that they're not on an actual string. It's literally just Magneto doing it in his mind as he's carrying out a conversation with Sabretooth. So he's just doing it by himself. And then when they exit the room, they're still going, and then they drop on the desk, clack, and then roll off the desk. I was like, that's such a badass, like, subtle detail. It's great character establishment, great establishment of like his power and his concentration and his range. I thought that was super cool. Later on, when they kidnap Senator Kelly, Magneto's going to have the senator constrained to this chair. And I like the detail of him dragging the chair across the floor with his Magneto powers, despite being able to easily lift him up in the air and levitate him. He drags him across the floor because it's a lot more menacing and intimidating. And I thought, man, yeah, Magneto is on his villain shit, and he is super cool from his A, the performance from Ian McKellen, B, the subtle details we're getting about his character, and C, he's just a compelling villain.
Yeah.
With a great backstory.
Yeah, and they are going to kidnap Senator Kelly. They're going to turn him into like a goo man. And honestly, Sabretooth is a really bad henchman because, well, first off, I don't know what Magneto was thinking. He was letting the senator hang off the side of his cliff. Again, like you said, he has a lair, a cliffside lair. So, okay. Mm-hmm. And then Sabretooth tries to grab him, but he turns into this stretchy blob thing. And then his shirt rips off. So he's trying to get him, and then Sabretooth just stands up with like the shirt piece, like, Magneto's pissed. Magneto's pissed. It's like, you shouldn't have never let him out of the room. Like, you let him with your stupidest henchman, like, all right, pull him up. Oh, I didn't. It's like, henchman.
Yeah, he kind of plays a dummy McDum-Dum. But Mystique is a very valuable asset to Magneto and his plan. I was wondering, like, there's a lot of overpowered powers in this movie with these characters. Charles Xavier could turn the world upside down politically with his minds. Magneto is immensely powerful. Everything's metal. He can control everything. Mystique can become anybody. She can come on the live TV as the president and say, I think we need to execute X, Y, and Z people, or we need to start a war with this country. Like, there's a lot of like sneaky overpowered powers in this movie. And it's scary. And the introduction of Mystique really makes audiences not trust when characters enter a scene, because there's going to be a scene later when they're looking for Rogue and Wolverine gets on the train. And he's like, hey, how you doing, kid? I was like, oh shit, is this Mystique? I can't tell. I forgot. So like the introduction of that character adds a new element to the movie, which is cool.
So much distrust because she captures the senator, and because Mystique's been playing his bodyguard for the last, we don't know how long.
Like his assistant,
Because Senator Kelly asked Magneto, what happened to my assistant? Magneto says, oh, he's been dead for weeks. Like, it's been Mystique. And also, Mystique's just everywhere all the time, too, which is crazy, because she's playing characters here and there and whatnot.
Because she infiltrates the school and she plays Bobby. So Bobby, I don't think they call him Iceman in the movie, but this is played by Shawn Ashmore, and you and I might know him as Lamplighter from The Boys. Mm-hmm. This is an early role by this guy. He's going to be a love interest for Rogue, and there's a scene where he approaches Rogue, and Rogue, like, Wolverine wakes up from Rogue because he's having a nightmare, stabs Rogue through the chest. Rogue takes Logan's regenerative powers to heal herself. And it's this whole big thing. And then the next day, Bobby, who's like her little love interest, comes up and says, hey, you never use your powers against another mutant. And when I listened to that, I thought, oh, that sounds like a very Magneto thing to say. That sounds like an absolute statement and something that you're just like, you never attack another mutant. But what if they're a bad mutant? It's then revealed that Bobby is Mystique. I was like, oh yeah, shit. You can't trust anybody who walks on screen with Mystique around.
That one shook me up more than the other one because it was we didn't know Bobby yet. So, and really Rogue didn't either. So you could
I think that was because Mystique is the bodyguard or the senator friend. So that was already revealed, but we weren't expecting it to be on our home turf yet, which was on the campus. Kept us on our toes. But Nick, Toad, I know you have some thoughts on Toad, but can I hit you with something?
Hit me.
He's a friend of the show, baby.
Whoa, Toad.
Do you know what Ray Park is most famous for? Who plays Toad?
No.
He plays Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, so one of his earliest roles was Darth Maul and Toad. So he's a very skilled guy with a baton. There's even that moment when Toad is like flipping a metal rod around, and it seemed like that could have been a meta nod to him being Maul. But Nick, he did perform the physical appearance of Darth Maul in Solo, A Star Wars Story, which is a movie we watched in 2024. Although the lines that were recited by Darth Maul were from the animated voice actor Sam Witwer. But yes, Ray Park, Toad, is a friend of the show. Welcome back to the program.
In Toad, I'll just shout this out now. For a mutant that you'd think drew the short straw for having Toad powers, Toad is OP. Toad is OP.
Yeah, dude.
He has a tongue that he can just attach to and swing like a grapple. He can spit out this goo that could cover your face and suffocate you. He could jump, Lord knows how high. He is crafty. Toad is an issue. Again, you might think, oh, the Toad, he's a frog guy. Do not underestimate Toad. Whatever you do not underestimate Toad. He almost took down multiple X-Men.
Yeah, he spit on Jean Grey's face and then she was incapacitated.
He took Storm, threw her down that elevator shaft, and that's when he took the pipe out and did his little twirlies.
Ridiculous.
James, I want to go back to our scene here where we just left off, the Mystique fooling Rogue scene. So then Rogue has run away because she thinks that Professor X hates her and she's not welcome here anymore. And they tell Professor X this, and he's shocked. And then he thinks real hard and he's like, I can't sense her here. She is gone. And I'm thinking to myself, couldn't you sense Mystique was here? Couldn't you be like, whoa, guys, something in my mind brain is saying there's a mutant here that shouldn't be here.
It's kind of like in Star Wars when Palpatine's just walking around as the Sith Lord underneath the Jedi's noses the entire time. And then you're like, how did no one sense that? Because you can force sense somebody. Why can't we sense Palpatine and his shady shit?
Yeah, it's a
I know
great
they
question.
probably make an excuse like, oh, the Dark Lord can mask his appearance, so maybe Mystique can too. But then in the third act, Wolverine's able to sniff her out. But I don't know if that's because he already knows what she smells like. So
they do make Wolverine a lot more animalistic in this movie than we get down the road, right? The whole when Jean wakes him up at first, he's like a caged animal. He's breathing heavy. You get a lot more quote unquote Wolverine here. But yeah, Rogue runs away. Logan is not a fan of this. He's going to go after her. The others are going to say, no, we're going to go with you. This is kind of the first, how these superhero movies go, the first outing as a quote unquote team, probably not going to go well. But Professor X is going to go look for Rogue, and he's going to go to Cerebro. But guess what? Mystique got into the Cerebro room and put poison in the Cerebro machine. I don't quite know how that works.
Yeah, that was the scene where I remember watching, but I forgot what happened and what she did. But I know something malfunctions.
She poisons the liquid that runs Cerebro. Anyway, so Professor X puts on his Cerebro helmet, tries to find Rogue, and then it just immediately like has an aneurysm,
malfunctions,
and falls to the ground. And then my next question was, then Jean, who is less powerful than Professor X at this time, says, I can do it. And she runs to use Cerebro and successfully finds Rogue. But I'm like, did they flush out Cerebro?
Maybe Professor X took all the poison juice on his run, and it was safe for Jean to go in.
Bold move. But James, we are going to find Rogue. She is going to be hopping a train. Jean tells us she's at the train station. There's one like a couple miles from here. She's hopping on a train. She's running away. So we are going to have a nice solid train station scene.
And this is what the scene I was referencing when Logan comes in to find her, tries to talk her out of leaving, and says, the professor wants you there. And I thought, is this Mystique? Is she getting catfished right now? But no, it is actually Logan. And then Magneto comes in like a straight up crazy person. It's like ripping the train apart, has Logan levitated off the ground, and just has full control of him because the skeleton is made of adamantium metal. So that sucks for Logan. This is the scene I was also referencing where I wasn't super fond of Cyclops' laser beam on the ceiling. I thought the effects were a little bit not ready. But yeah, this is where Toad is kind of handling his own against Cyclops, and Storm and Sabretooth is also there. Nick, we get to this standoff outside of the train station. There's a bunch of cops with their guns drawn. Nick, I gotta say, this is the best scene of the game.
It's so good.
This is like a masterclass of what the X-Men is all about. At its core, the conflict, the ideologies, the power sets coming into play. It's so good. So it shows that Magneto is powerful. This scene really shows the Darth Vader-ness of Magneto. When he walks outside, all the cops draw the guns and he just lifts up his hands. The 2 cop cars go up. Bam. It's a big theatrical example of power. He rips all the guns away from the cops and turns them around and points to them. And I thought the visual effects look really good on this. So cool. It's such a cool visual. And then when it looks like Magneto has all the power, we're hit with this twist where Sabretooth grabs the neck of Magneto and says, Eric, that's enough. And you're like, what? Sabretooth hasn't said anything, let alone anything intelligent in the entire movie. Why is he like wising up now? And then there's a plot twist that it's Charles Xavier taking over the mind of Sabretooth and Toad. And we really get to showcasing how OP both Magneto and Professor X are. We get to the core of the human-mutant relations with both these guys, which are on opposite ends of the debate. And then I thought when Magneto shoots the gun at the cop, I thought the bullet was being stopped by Professor X and Jean Grey, because the way it's edited, it makes it seem like Jean Grey's looking at it, but it is Magneto holding back.
Yeah.
And, he says, like, I can't stop all the bullets, Charles. So I like that better because it shows that Magneto is not as cold-blooded as he appears to be, because he could have easily executed that guy. But then that's like a bargaining chip. That's a chess piece. That's a pawn. And Charles and Eric play chess all the time against each other. It's going to be like a reoccurring thing that those two characters do, being the ultimate frenemies. And then when Magneto leaves the scene in the helicopter, all the weapons are still drawn and the bullet's still spinning on that guy's forehead. And then after a beat, all of them drop. And again, it just showcases Magneto's badassness and his abilities. The scene is like so good. It's so good.
It's really good. And a small little detail that I noticed, because I picked this up, because I've watched all the X-Men's, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, right? I've seen them all. I love them all.
Yep.
And throughout the movie, at least this original trilogy, only one person calls Magneto Eric because he knows him personally. So when Sabretooth says that's enough, Eric, the second you could see Magneto's face when his Sabretooth's hand is around his neck and he's like, huh? And then it's the second he says, that's enough, Eric, you see Magneto's face just sort of go like, oh.
Yeah, and he's like, why don't you come out where I can see you, Charles?
Why not come out where I can see you, Charles?
Rate my accents. So yeah, they do end up successfully kidnapping Rogue. And then soon after this part in the movie, Senator Kelly wets the table.
Senator Kelly is dead.
Yeah, he does. This is bad CGI when he blobs out. Like,
I didn't think it was that bad.
It's not that. It didn't take me out of the movie, but it's on the scale of good or bad. I'd say bad. It's not awful. It's not horrific. It's not.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's right on the line. I wouldn't say it's bad. I'd say it's right in the middle, pretty mid. Like for me, the Cyclops blasts are bad. They just look bad.
Yeah, but Rogue is kidnapped, so they need her power to be able to use this machine to turn everyone into mutants. She's going to be the power source. Magneto's going to give her some of his power by touching her skin so that she's powerful enough, because I think Magneto and Charles are the two strongest, like level 1 mutants or something like that.
Magneto needs his power to power the machine, but he wants to use Rogue to power the machine. So he gives Rogue his powers to do his dirty work.
Yeah. I think it worked really well too, because then at the end, he's trying to stop Wolverine. He's struggling to, where previously he was able to control him really easily, but you're going, oh, he touched Rogue, he's weak. So it all worked out together. But James, we're going to have our final confrontation, or at least work up to our final confrontation. Our X-Men are all going to get together. We're getting in the X-Jet. It's time to finally team up. The second team up always goes better than the first team up. We get that fun little phrase where they're all in their black leather suits, and Wolverine says, "You guys wear these?" And Cyclops says, "What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?" Like,
I gotta give a boo to that. Boo! We want the yellow spandex.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Yes, no, I did have thoughts on this. This is very famous in X-Men lore. So producer Ralph Winter on that line, he said it wasn't a jab to comic book fans. It was more of an acknowledgement to fans of saying, yeah, we know we're deviating from the comic book look, but it comes off very snarky and it comes off very jabby.
Yeah.
I loved watching episode 9 of X-Men 97 when the animated version of Scott Summers is standing around a room of costumes on display, and a character says, "What am I, going to the circus?" And then he says, "What did you expect? Black leather?"
Am I going to war or a circus?
What'd you expect? Black leather?
Yeah, there you go. That's nice little meta lore redemption. Yeah. It does come off as like we're too cool and we wear leather and we're matrixy.
This is the new era of X-Men. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to be silly, but like, you know, I guess again, of the time, you know, you're thinking, oh, it's a little bit cheesy if we're running around in the yellow and blue suit, or Storm's in a white one piece, or Scott Summers is in a blue unitard with yellow underwear and a yellow belt. But we're going to finally get that in Avengers Doomsday, and it's going to look awesome.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman's Wolverine looked awesome in Deadpool and Wolverine. So yeah, it did come off as very jabby and snarky. I don't know if that's like a backtrack comment from Ralph Winter, or if they sincerely thought they were pointing it out in a meta way. But yeah, it's, you know, we want the comic book outfits, man. So just give it to us.
That only took 20 years.
While they approach the Statue of Liberty, the X-Jet is creeping in the background. And in the foreground, there's some harbor guards on a boat. The jet kind of makes like a thunderous noise in the background. And one of the guys says, "Sounds like a storm's coming." I'm like, ha! Get it? Storm. Halle Berry.
We're going to have a couple more cheesy lines here, because at the base of the Statue of Liberty, which is where the torch of the Statue of Liberty is where Magneto has placed his machine, so he can get all the UN council who are in New York.
On Ellis Island.
Yep. And so we're at the base of this, and at one point, I forget what Cyclops says, but Wolverine flips him off with his one claw, like, ha. And then we also get a keep your eye open. You're like, a little jab at those Cyclops there. Like, all right. We're getting a little cheesy with the lines here in the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Speaking of that, I think, so when I was talking about Joss Whedon and how he did he made an attempt on this script, and I mentioned that there's 2 lines that were kept from Whedon's draft in this final version. They come in this moment, they come in the third act, and these kind of cheesy one-liners and comedic, humoristic tone of this encounter is very 2012 Avengery. Because like that was all like wisecracks and like hoo-hoo, and you know, they're just like little cheesy lines. One of those lines was when Storm is confronting Toad. Storm says,
You know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
So David Hayter was like, I kept that from Whedon's script because I thought it was just so unique and funny. But when Storm delivers it, she's such a serious and noble character. It doesn't really fit with her character at all.
Yeah. She's not someone to like taunt you on the knockout blow.
No, it's like, yeah, she's not wisecracking. She's not a Deadpool. It's very out of character. So that was a Joss Whedon line that got kept in and kind of got misassigned, I'd say.
Joss Whedon did a pass of the script while I was writing it because the studio, again, wanted me dead and fired. And so Joss did this whole pass, and fortunately, Bryan didn't care for it. He was like, that's not the type of movie we're making. But there was a lot of cool stuff, and I learned a lot from Joss's draft. And a few things stayed in, like this speech, I was coming to America, it was going to be the land of peace, but there is no peace. A lot of that is Joss. And so he wrote that line, do you know what happens to a toad when it gets hit by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else. And I thought it was a good line. I think the problem with it is that Halle had done the whole movie in this South African accent, this beautiful South African accent, and the filmmakers panicked at the last minute and made her re-record all of her lines. So a lot of her lines are looped, and it feels like she's not really in the movie.
The other one was when Mystique turns into Logan, and we don't know if Logan is Logan. They're like, hey, prove that you're Logan. Wolverine says to Scott Summers, you're a dick. And they're like, okay, fair enough. That was another Joss Whedon line. So it's like very Avengers tones in this scene.
Yeah, and I distinctly recall that scene. 10-year-old me thought that was hilarious. You're a dick.
It's a decent joke. Yeah, that is hilarious for kids. And it's kind of like a blow out the nose reaction from adults. You're like, classic.
I do want to call out what you were talking about, James, we got the Mystique Wolverine fight. Where everything's fine. Then a second Wolverine runs in the room and they kind of tussle on the ground. No one knows which one is which. And so they get into this epic fight. Mystique does do a good old-fashioned ball kick on Wolverine, and we get the metal ting. And I thought that didn't need to get thrown in at all. But
we got Back to the Future 2 when we called Griff's ball kick a titanium sack kick. We got adamantium sack this time.
I don't know if his sack is adamantium, but yeah, we got a ting. I don't know if Mystique's wearing metal-toed boots.
Yeah, or maybe she really kind of underhooked him and got him in the tailbone. Who knows? But Nick, Mystique is we had a question about this. Can she turn into objects? Because she camouflages as a Statue of Liberty, like a small model inside the room. Yeah. And then, of course, we need the yellow eye reveal to know it's Mystique. So I thought, can she just turn into an inanimate object? We're kind of cooked if that's the case. Can she turn into a pencil and then just go in your pocket?
Yeah, I have no idea. Does it have to be human size? I know she can camouflage. So was she? I can see her being in front of the Statue of Liberty, posing like it, and then
it looked like she was
in.
the Statue of Liberty.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It looked like it. So
what's the extent of her powers? Because she does morph into Wolverine, like we said, and then she does have her own claws.
Retractable claws, yeah.
Okay, does she have the ability to copy powers and to copy adamantium from a loose general search online? No, but because there is a point when they're fighting and then Hugh Jackman's Logan cuts off Mystique's quote unquote claws and they just cut straight through, and Hugh Jackman playing a Mystique version makes a funny grimacing face and blows kisses at himself like Mystique. I always like when there's a Freaky Friday situation. Yeah. And actors do a good job of emulating the other character, in Chamber of Secrets when Harry Potter and Ron go undercover as Malfoy's friends. You think it's Harry and Ron, but it's no, it's these two actors pretending to be Harry and Ron, and they're doing a good job. I always enjoy that.
Yeah.
When you buy in, you're that Jamie Lee Curtis is doing such a good job being Lindsay Lohan. You're no, idiot. It's Lindsay Lohan being Lindsay Lohan. You dumbass.
Idiot. But Wolverine does get the last laugh because Mystique halfway through the fight kind of slinks up a gutter and is off. And so now we're going, oh shoot, this Mystique is out there again. I don't know who to trust.
and again, I'm sorry to like dwell on this, but the fight scene, I think, between Mystique and Wolverine is kind of a weak point in the final battle. It's a little wiry. It's a little too choreographed. There's like weird camera swoops.
Yeah.
It's a little bit clunky in parts.
If you hate wire work, get ready. Wait about 10 minutes in the movie.
I do need to shout out another friend of the show, Kihei Kwan, who helped with the fight choreography.
Oh.
We know him as Short Round from Temple of Doom. When I saw him in the credits, he was actually credited in this movie as Jonathan Ki Kwan. So it seems like he felt to anglicize his name as a teenager in order to assimilate into the American workplace, because he thought that he would get more work as an actor and not be racially typecast based on his name and his work in following movies as Short Round and Temple of Doom and as Data in the Goonies. So it always sucks when you hear like someone's got to change something about themselves. Fortunately, when he made his acting comeback, he reverted back to his birth name of Kihei Kwan when he was in the Oscar award-winning movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Love our boy Kihei Kwan.
Absolutely. Well, James, Mystique's going to meet her quote-unquote end when Storm walks into the room and Logan's standing in the middle and he's sniffing and he says,
The other one ain't far away.
and Storm says, come on, we got to get back with the group. And then Wolverine drops an aura line. He goes, we do. There's just one problem.
I know, but there's a problem. You're not part of the group.
Storm turns back into Mystique, hits the ground.
This was sick. Like I said, the character moments are on point where, you know, the fight choreography might not be the most exciting thing. It's these little moments of like Magneto showing his powers, Logan sniffing this out. Cause I thought Logan was Mystique and he killed Storm, but then it was the other way around.
Yeah. You're all confuzzled up.
So like when Mystique as Storm gets stabbed, like she actually is like malfunctioning and like Logan's claws come out of her as well. Like she's reverting through the past copies of what she just did. So I thought that was a cool moment. This movie sure does know how to highlight those small details, and they make them like a little chef's kiss on a rewatch.
They do. Well, James, with Mystique down, it is time for us to go ahead and get up to the top of the Statue of Liberty and have our final showdown. Waiting for our heroes at the top of the Statue of Liberty, we have Sabretooth, we have Toad, of course we have Magneto, our girl Rogue is up there, she is chained up, she's going to be used for this machine. Magneto swiftly takes care of everybody here, Jean, Cyclops, Storm, and Wolverine, because he just bends metal and twists them up so that they don't have their hands. Sabretooth takes Cyclops' what would you call it? Visor, sunglasses? What is he?
Yeah, this is visor.
His visor. Wolverine, Magneto puts his claws against his chest there, so he can't do anything. And they're going to have to watch as Rogue goes ahead and turns everybody into mutants. Like, our heroes are doomed. What are we going to do? Storm can't use lightning. Magneto's smart. He goes, oh, you're going to do that? This is made out of copper. You're in a copper tube. You idiot.
Idiot.
I've thought of it all. What he didn't think of is the resolve of Wolverine, who will stab himself through the chest. We know his regenerative powers, so it's not that crazy for him to do that.
I was confused how
I don't know how him stabbing him in the chest frees him.
Yeah, how did he free himself from like a metal constraint by stabbing himself?
Unless he like stabbed himself and then like ripped. That confused me too, but it seems like the second he pushed his claws out, he fell.
Because he's kind of doing, like, for the audience, if you're listening and not watching, he's doing like a Wakanda Forever pose. And then so like he stabs his own chest with his claws. So did like the claws like extend out and like push him out against the wall?
Felt like the metal broke.
Wolverine actually punctures the metal band on his back, breaking it on impact with his adamantium claws. It can be easily missed, but there is a quick shot of it.
Anyway, we're going to go move past that because it's time for Wolverine to fight Sabretooth. Wolverine's getting thrown by Sabretooth, who's so strong, across the top of the Statue of Liberty. This is where all that wire work comes into play. He has that one iconic, I call it iconic, maybe infamous, I remember it a lot, where he gets thrown off the Statue of Liberty. Wolverine sticks his claws into one of the points of the crown on the Statue of Liberty, and he swings around in a circle, pops back up on the crown.
Cool shot.
Puts his pose together. Then he lunges forward with his wires.
Yeah.
Stabs him in the chest.
Wolverine. Superman. Yeah. Superman's that hoe.
The way it all ends is he gets the visor for Cyclops, Jean Grey is going to lift it up in front of his eyes, says, open your eyes, puts it at a sick angle. And so his beams come out, hit the visor, hit Sabretooth. Sorry, I blanked on the name.
I was like, dramatic pause. What if Michael Jackson was Sabretooth?
He doesn't really have a lot of lines.
He would just make noises because Sabretooth makes a lot of like lion growling noises. So like, you know,
if every time the claws come out, it came out with like, yeah. I don't want to understate when Sabretooth gets hit by Cyclops' beam, the yeet that happens
immense
out the side of this head of the Statue of Liberty. And then he sort of just stops mid blast. He doesn't like keep flying. He kind of like stops and then falls right down. I thought he got yeeted out like miles, and then he falls on a boat in the harbor right next to the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. So the physics didn't quite work for me, but
was it that Looney Tunesy and like run off a cliff and then just like pause there and then fall straight down?
No, I just think the way the effects looked made it
like the way it was built up. He should have been like absolutely sent, but then he kind of just like
the velocity he was hit with makes me think he should have been on the mainland in New York City. Like that's the velocity our homie was hit with.
Fair enough.
And he kind of just lost a lot of momentum randomly. That's all I'll say. Our heroes are free. Logan, boom, 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 takes his claws, frees everybody. You know, how are we going to do this? I forget. Jeans or somebody says, "Oh, Storm, create a tornado and just lift me up there." And thank God she said this. It doesn't work. I can't control it like that. What are you talking about? Can't just yeet you up in a tornado perfectly on top of this machine. Cyclops is like, I have a shot. I could blow the whole thing up. We'll kill Rogue, but we kind of have to do this. And then Wolverine says, well, throw me up there. And then if I miss, you could blow up the machine anyway. I'm like, that's actually a good plan. He's like, yeah, dude, like I can't die anyway. If I fall, you know, off the top of the Statue of Liberty, I'm fine. And so she yeets him up there. Wolverine gets into the machine. He's going to jam his claws into the machine. We have our weakened Magneto who's stopping him. Then we get bendy claws. And then the whole time Cyclops is going like, trying to find a shot. And then he goes, I have a shot. And his shot's on Magneto, who's been standing still for the last 30 seconds. It's like, bro, you've had this shot. And you just did one of your little concentrated pew beams. Like pew pew beams. Magneto falls down. Wolverine successfully destroys the machine. Bing, bang, boom. Day is saved. But Rogue, not breathing. So what's Logan have to do? He has to make himself a sacrifice. He's touching her forehead, hugs her, holds her. And then all of a sudden you see his eyes start to like pretty intense. I guess she needs a lot of energy. So she's taking a lot of it. He passes out. Rogue's like, what just happened? Magneto's passed out. The jet comes. We're back in Xavier's school. Xavier's still like knocked out at this point in the game from that poison. That thing really did a number on him. And he wakes up. How'd we do? Because I'm surprised. For some reason, I remember him being more involved in this final fight. But he's been out of commission for the last like 30, 45 minutes here. There's been this love triangle with Jean and Cyclops and Wolverine. Wolverine basically tells Jean, you know,
hey, baby,
I'm in love with you. Professor X tells Wolverine, hey, here's where you'll find all your answers in the Canadian Rockies. This is the facility that turned him into Weapon X originally. He leaves. It's kind of a muddled ending. There's like, they try to fit in a lot of closure in the last like 5-10 minutes of it. And then we'll see what picks up here in X-Men 2. Was it Reunited?
X2, X-Men United.
But this is X-Men 2002. Finn. James, I want to say something before
2000.
2000. Thank you. I want to say something before you tell us the funniest name in the credits.
Yes, go ahead.
For some reason, I thought I was like, I don't remember there being a post-credit scene. That's not really something we did too much, although Daredevil had it. Because the credits were like 10 to 11 minutes long. So the movie ends at like 1:35 or 1:33, but the runtime is 1:47. So I was just screaming through the credits. No, it's all credits. It's like 10 minutes of credits. A lot of special thanks, a lot of effects, obviously, early on there. but I think they drew them out. Maybe they were really slow credits. I don't know. Just pointing it out there. Long ass credits.
Well, Nick, when we hit the credits, that means we're going to get the funniest names in the credits. And sounds like we have a lot of names to pick from due to the length of credits. I do want to shout out somebody who's not part of the funniest names of the credits, but George Booza. He was the truck driver who gave Rogue a lift in the very beginning. And she's like, I thought you were taking me to this place. It's like, this is this place. That's actually the voice actor for Beast in the X-Men animated series. So he got his little time to shine in this. Also, I want to point out, I didn't point out during the plot talk, but would we technically count James Marsden and Rebecca Romaine as friends of the show? Because they did technically have that magazine cover Easter egg in Fantastic Four 2005.
I'll allow it.
It was like an in-universe joke. Okay, all right. So Ray Park, James Marsden, Rebecca Romaine were already friends of the show, so welcome in. But Nick, the new names I'm going to bring up that are funny to me from the credits are Ross Fanger, Rando Schmook, Michael Plug, and Basil Person.
Basil Person?
Basil Person. B-A-S-I-L, last name Person.
That's Basil Person.
You can call me Salsa Boy. Popcorn Person. And now it is time for the award section. It's our mini pops. This is the best. This is the worst of the movie. It's awards that are going to culminate to the end of the year wrap party. You're reviewing this movie first, so I'm going to reveal my awards first, and you can count me down.
I do want to remind the audience, new season, we've done this once, to our existing awards of Best Weapon, Best Fighter, Most Valuable Character, and Biggest Piece of Shit, we have added the Best Death.
It is like the best yeet, you know, so maybe if there's a movie where no one dies,
might not have it.
Maybe there's no best death.
Our DCOM might not have a death. We'll see.
I hope it does, but if it has a death, no matter how lame, it has to be nominated.
All right, James, counting you down from 3, 2, 1.
Here we go. All right, Nick. So my best weapon is Wolverine's claws. My best fighter is going to be Magneto, with Wolverine as a wild card, as a reminder for franchises of the year. We're going to see these guys again, so maybe someone else is going to step up in the next movie, and this person can take the accolade in this movie, the next one's next man up on the next movie, or you just need two from the same movie, because this movie was stacked with best fighters. Not gonna lie. Nick, my MVC is Magneto. My biggest piece of shit is Toad. My best death was Kelly wets the table. And the best yeet, I originally didn't have anything that stuck out to me, but you talked me into Cyclops versus Sabretooth.
I love it.
And now I want to see who you're thinking for your nominees for the cornies and the poppies, the mini pops, mini corns. I want you to hit the audience in 3, 2, 1.
All right, James, very similar to you. I did have the same best fighter in Magneto, same MVC in Magneto. My best weapon, I put the mutant machine.
Okay.
So the machine that turned Senator Kelly into the Wets. My biggest piece of shit, that was the bar guy who confronted Wolverine at the beginning of the movie. After getting his ass kicked in the cage, he comes back in the bar. You owe me money. Like, dude, what the fuck? What's wrong with you? Best death, yeah, Senator Kelly. And my best yeet is Sabretooth as well. So,
okay,
we disagree on weapon. I like claws. Claws are fine. So, I think wielding the mutant machine in the Cinedome, you got to think about that when you do these things.
You have to think about that. Also, it's like not supposed to be a weapon. It's supposed to be a tool, and then it just malfunctions and it just ends up killing Senator Kelly. But my idea was, since we learned that the adamantium claws were installed into Wolverine, that counts as a weapon, in my opinion. So when we hit the Cinedome, whoever draws that is just going to have the Wolverine claw ability. And that's just that.
Yeah.
Let's go with claws for that. We agree on Magneto. I'm sure Wolverine's going to show up. So we'll just call him the wild card winner for this one. But Magneto is our OP fighter. He's automatically in. NBC Magneto, he's in. Biggest piece of shit. Nothing really compelling to me about Toad or Bar Guy. Even Senator Kelly could be thrown in there. So first round exit, maybe doesn't even make the cut for the bracket on this one. But who do you want to say for a finalist?
I like what you brought up. I didn't even think about Senator Kelly, but he kind of is our biggest piece of shit. How he acts behind the scenes is pretty shitty. So I'd say let's nominate the guy who neither of us actually put down.
It wasn't even on our nomination ballots. Okay, let's do it. Senator Kelly. Best death. I love that you went with Senator Kelly with me on What's the Table.
Yeah.
He died in the X-Men's care. What a tragedy. He was better off in the ocean.
He belongs to the sea.
That wraps up our awards. What a great lineup. Let's get into the final review, and we get there via our sarcastic selling points. Nick, I will go first. I don't have a clean one. I have I'm pretending to be the producer one. So forgive me if it's not that funny or sarcastic. But I said, as Bryan Singer, let's make an X-Men movie, but I don't want to draw inspiration from the X-Men comics. Instead, I'll ask people who do know the X-Men comics to write it in order to make a proper X-Men movie.
James, I love it. I was going in a similar direction as you. I just said X-Men, but we're going to make it dark. And then I said, but sir, that's not X-Men at all. And I said, shut your mouth and don't let me see you with those comic books.
Final review. Fight.
Alrighty, Nick. It is now the final review time. We're going to get into what the other guys think about this movie. Then we'll get into what we think about it. We're going to start out with our usual suspects. Speaking of Bryan Singer, unfortunately, with Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, 82% of the critics like this movie.
They sure did, James. And one tick higher from the people, they have it at an 83%.
Very nice. Classic Metacritic critic score is the lowest one, and it's coming in at a 64, which is a 6.4 on the popcorn scale.
Do we know when Metacritic sort of popped up?
So Metacritic launched in January 2001. So it's been around for a while, but I know that it takes the weighted average of critic scores and assigns a score to critic reviews. Rotten Tomatoes is just a binary system, but basically it's like how many people thumbs up it and how many people thumbs down it. So with this 82% and 83% score, it's not an 8.2 and 8.3 rating of the movie. That's the percentage of people that quote unquote liked it versus people who quote unquote did not like it.
Yeah.
I forget if it's 65 or 70%.
I think it's 60.
Is it 60? A Rotten Tomatoes rating or tomato meter score is the percentage of professional critics who gave a movie or TV show a positive review, with 60% or higher being fresh, red tomato, and below 60 being rotten. So that's like a very low bar in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a little skewed, but no, Metacritic is like...
Well, the reason I was asking was I was wondering if people were going back and retroactively criticizing the movie other than seeing it in the moment. Like I know Rotten Tomatoes has been around for a long time.
Just like pulling up the critic score on Metacritics. So it has a 64, which is generally favorable, as they put it, with 23 positive reviews, 7 mixed, 3 negative. So like this media outlet called Slate has an assigned score of a 90 because the review is, it's a rich, impressive comic book fantasy, easily the summer's best blockbuster. So there's a link for the full review. So then you go there and then there's nothing really, this is like a broken link. LA Weekly gives it a 90. The film's strength and its entertainment lie on John Muir's production design, its generally appealing cast, and perhaps most importantly, a canny degree of self-parody. And if I were to go down to like a bad review, Washington Post gives it a 10, and they don't give it a 10. Metacritic assigns a 10 to their score based on their wording. So Washington Post says, isn't juvenile, it isn't infantile, it's prenatal! Exclamation point.
Wow.
Dallas Observer, Metacritic assigned it a 20 score from its review, which is summarized as an ambitious, frustrating drag.
Huh.
So they'll look at these reviews and they'll say like, oh, this person, I think, thought it was like a 20% rating of a movie. This person looks like they fucking hated it. So let's give them a 10 out of 100. Like the film.com, Metacritic gave it a flat 50 because the review summarized was a very odd cinematic creature.
It's a weird scale.
It is weird, but it's a little bit more reliable than Rotten Tomatoes because, again, it's just like that's just percentages of people who gave it a 60 and that's it. So it's a little funny how they do that. Did you not know how Metacritic worked? I know I explained it in the past, but now that you're looking at it, like if you click on the critic reviews, Metacritic assigns numbers out of 100 based on the writer's tone of the review, basically, and what they said.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure if I remember that, so that's on me, but interesting.
They're mostly going on like the whole entire history of reviews ever since release. And I don't know if like new reviews come out. I doubt they would come out like for a 2000 movie for critics.
Yeah.
But fans like Rotten Tomatoes, I'm sure, just can fluctuate. There's new editions all the time.
Especially once the announcement came for Avengers, you could see a lot of people went back, rewatched it, re-rated it. I mean, they pour in all the time. James, the people of Metacritic, though, they gave this a 7.3. So they were a little more favorable with it.
They sure are a little bit more favorable, Nick. And now for our adamantium sack.
Wait, why are we wearing black?
Sabretooth doesn't do a lot of talking, and Storm do be shocking. While Mystique is out here stalking, and Professor X is moonwalking. Score, brought to you by the Re-elect Senator Kelly campaign from IMDb, a 7.3.
Oh, are you Cerebroing into my head?
Did you moonwalk into Cerebro with me? Nick, what was the funniest review you found on the internet?
Unnamed user on October 2nd, 2021 gave it this a half star. And said anyone who rates this 1 star or more has never read one of the comics. And you, sir, are what's wrong with fandoms of comics and characters. Don't be that guy. Don't gatekeep. Let people enjoy their movies, damn it.
Well, he has a point, because Bryan Singer didn't pick up a comic ever.
Yeah, but don't be like, oh, if you rate this more than 1.
Not half star. Yeah, not half star worthy.
This guy.
I know your laughable logline and popcorn points are not going to be a half star, and you're up first, buddy. So when you're ready, hit us with it. Let us know what you're thinking for a score, your final thoughts, starting out with that laughable logline.
All righty. I'm going to hit you with it, James. My laughable logline is a young mutant shaped by the Holocaust has now become mutant Hitler. And James, a little unhinged there. My final thoughts. Oh, man, I'm really conflicted on this movie. I got to tell you, I'm conflicted. I'm trying not to let the whole production and the director and all of that stuff we talked about at the top affect my score. As we talk about through the movie, through Plot Talk, we were discussing it, and I think I'm going to stick to my original 7. I feel like a 7.0 is a really good place for this movie to live for me. For those who forget where our score is, 7 is a microwaved popcorn. It is good and buttery. It's comfort food. It's you sit on the couch and you enjoy it. You know, the effects were fine. Nothing great. Nothing horrible. Didn't take me out of it. Wire work is fun. There's some cheesy lines. There's some eye rolls. But all in all, I would say the pacing of the movie was really good. There's not a lot of downtime. There's not a lot of origin stories, which I appreciate for a movie of this time. It really just kind of threw you in. Bang, bang, bang. This is happening. These are the characters. They introduced all the characters really well. And then, it's getting most of its points from me for the casting. Just the cast was incredible. We probably should have looked up who did the casting on this, because they knocked it out of the park. All the actors did great. And for that, I'm going to give it a flat 7. I might revise this at the end of the year after watching the whole trilogy, but I think it's a good, comfortable place for me.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. Let me hit you with my laughable logline and final popcorn points. Laughable logline is a group of mutant school teachers team up with a rogue Canadian mutant to take down the Mad Magnet Man mutant while wearing black leather. Nick, I pre-popped this at a 7.7. And after a conversation, it's going to go down. Man. I mean, there's always the revision at the end, but we're trying to avoid that. I think I'm going to... We really had war games up there. I think I'm going to have this... I'm going to go 7.4. Because what this movie lacks in like fight choreography and like some of the effects aren't super exciting and semi-distracting. I really do think, like you said, the casting was perfect. The performances were great. I don't think there was really a weak link at all as far as the lineup of characters and performances we got. I think it was just perfection. It set up a whole 25 plus year career for some of these guys. I think for the ambitious project of an X-Men movie coming off Blade and coming off the unreleased Fantastic Four movie, superhero movies were just not in a good state. They were in a shaky state. They really nailed it with this one. And despite all the behind the scenes drama and the Bryan Singer being like a dirt bag, you know, a lot of people came in and did a lot of good work on this. And it's very watchable. It's very enjoyable. I can rewatch this from time to time and not think it's super dated. The of the time comment just shines through on the treatment of superhero movies back in the early 2000s. But honestly, I still think it's a really good movie, and the thematics are great. And that has a lot of credit to the X-Men comics and just the storyline that are found in the original source material, which is why I think we should be referencing it and not shying away from it. But, you know, fuck you, Bryan Singer, you piece of shit. And I think I remember liking X2, X-Men United, the best out of the original trilogy. So I'm excited to go into that when we hit it. And that's our take on X-Men 2000.
There it is.
We want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow us. Like I said before, we are on Instagram and YouTube at Just Play It Podcast. We are on X, aka Twitter, at Just Play It Pod. You are going to want to join us next time because we're going to be doing a movie that involves somebody, I'm assuming, who steals stuff.
I'm hoping that there's a heist involved.
Has to be. Or at least some sort of cat burglary. Who knows? We won't know until we get there. So we're going to see you next time. We are heading gone. And remember, stay away from my girl. Fuck you, Bryan Singer.
Like to cut off his dick, turn him into an X-Man. Oh!
I don't get it.
Cut off his dick. He's no longer a man, so he's an X-Man.
Oh.
Former man.
I will support it.
It's my Marshall Mathers wordplay there. Make you an X-Man, X-Man.
I cut his dick off, making him an X-Man, because he ain't no man, because he used to be a man, and now he's a man, but that ain't the plan.
You panicking, panicking.
Panicking, send him to Japan, he'd be panicking, Napkins.
Napkins.